Good morning and welcome to Alive and Thriving. I'm Nathaniel J. and I'm super excited to have you here. We're going to be reading chapter 13 from Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East by Baird T. Spalding. And I read this live yesterday on Facebook, but it seemed appropriate not to leave a gap in the YouTube uploads as well as the other online uploads. So without further ado, here is chapter 13. And I hope that each and every single one of you had a wonderful, wonderful Easter. As I like to call it, the transfiguration of the soul day, because that is truly what yesterday signifies. The transformation, somebody achieving homo luminous status. The morning of our departure, the community was awakened at 3 o'clock by the voice of the Chela chanting. We were aware that something unusual was happening, as he was inviting all to come forth for a moment, and at 3 o'clock in the morning, you know it's unusual. As we stepped out from the temple, the light from the Bodhisattva blazed forth so brightly that the whole section was aglow, and the Chela stood on the corner of the temple and asked for silent contemplation. We could see hundreds of forms then standing with their arms upraised. Now imagine, you remember from 2 episodes ago, when we looked at Taksang, or Bodhisattva as it was called when this book was written, it's in the middle of nowhere, on the side of a cliff. At 3 o'clock in the morning, before there was electricity, this place is lit up. That's impressive. That would definitely leave an impression on your psyche. The silence was broken by the words, "Hail, hail, hail," the Master Pariji chants. Thousands of voices joined in, and the echo gave the effect of many more thousands. And in the stillness of the morning, every word could be heard. These were his words. Could there be a God of the Hindu, a God of the Mongol, a God of the Jew, and a God of the Christian? There is a true universal principle, director, primal, infinite, and divine. The central light of that principle is called God, and God must enfold all. God does enfold all, and all are God. This surely does not mean a God of just one and not for all. When we speak of God, we speak of one and all, for all, in all, through all, and of all. Should the Hindu name his God and say that there is no other, his thought is divided. And should the Mongol name his God and say that there is no other, then his thought is divided. And should the Jew do the same, then his thought is divided. And the same goes for the Christian. If he thinks his God is the only one, then his thought is divided. A house divided unto itself is shattered and must fall. United, it does maintain forever. Choose you whom you will serve. Division is failure and death. Unity in father-mother principle is eternal progress, honor, and dominion. Om. 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 It seemed as though this Om reverberated around the whole world. We could hear the echoes of the Om reverberations for at least 10 minutes, and as though a temple gong had sounded. At times it seemed as though the rocks themselves were giving forth the Om. And as these reverberations gradually ceased, all gathered in the great rock amphitheater below us, and we joined the assembly. When we were seated with our group, Yogi Santi raised his arms above his head, and in unison they all chanted Om as before. Again the rocks seemed to send forth the vibrations, and this lasted until the mill was finished. As we arose, all stood silent for a moment, and then sang the Chela. We shall bid you farewell, and our greatest blessings we leave as we depart from your most gracious presence. May we ask the honor of a return welcome. We hesitate to depart and know that we with longing hearts and eyes shall look forward to our return. We bid you farewell, and may the richest blessings of all that is holy be bestowed upon you. The reply came as though with one voice. Loved ones, we are never parted. Though you may think space separates us, it is not so, because distance has no power to separate. For God and yourself, well, they permeate all space. We need not even say farewell, for we see you at all times face to face. You do not go, and you do not come. You are always here. There is no time, no parting, no passing. The present is here, hence the future also. Where can we be except we are all together in God? Do not go hence, but come hither, and you are always here. As the last words floated out to us, we were well on the trail, and while our steps were retreating, we were still there. There was no parting, and we have never felt that we actually left that sacred place. All day long the Chela laughed and sang, and again his laughter and song lifted us bodily, as it were, over the most difficult of places. We arrived again then at Mahamuni, the Silent One, at 2 o'clock that afternoon, and instead of stopping for the night, we pushed on, and though we traveled for 16 hours and covered over 70 miles that day, we were not fatigued. Thus we traveled to Sansroar. Here we were conducted to a beautiful temple near the lake, where we rested for 2 days before pushing on through the Trans-Himalayan Pass. This is a near paradise. The lake rests like a jewel in a great mountain setting, and birds sang from the trees all around. Here the greater portion of the party lived. We would go on to Muktanath with Yogi Santi, the laughing Chela accompanying our party. We had often heard of the difficulties of this pass, but although we were many days on the trail, we were encountered very few difficulties. We reached Muktanath in due time. There we were again greeted by Emil and a number of our friends. No words could convey the pleasure we experienced at this reunion. We had traveled far and had been accorded the greatest hospitality and kindness, yet here we experienced the thrill of a true homecoming. While we were relating some of our experiences that evening, Emil said, "Now you know why the Tibetans, at altitudes of 21,000 feet, are apparently undisturbed with heavy loads upon their backs. Now you know how they climb Mount Everest, as they claim. They go to the crest of the god of the mountains, as they call Mount Everest, and they overcome, or come up over, the lowercase g god of the mountain, just as they overcome the god of any burden. In other words, they let go of the burden, and then the burden does not exist. You cannot put a burden upon the shoulders, much less upon the form of a true God-man. Now you may see the truth in Jesus' statement, "Come unto me, all ye that are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest." The true statement was, "I am does give you rest." When you rest in the I am, you change from the God of burden to God that is rest and peace. You have come up over the God of burden to the Father of rest, and therein you carry no burdens. God the Father is man's power to think rightly and directly through any condition. Man, as the poor worm of the dust, is not in God consciousness. This man expressing in the worm, well, that's expressing in worm consciousness only. If you are shooting at a target and you wish to hit the mark, you must focus your whole thought upon the center of the target, and then, with your will in complete focus, you must see nothing but the mark. When you have hit the mark, you have brought forth or accomplished God in a degree. God is your divine ideal, the focal point upon which every thought and act is centered. It is in this way that you bring forth the divine spiritual man, the Christ of God, the Word made flesh. The flesh is God, as well as God is around the flesh. Make your subjective one objective. A willing and all-wise worker with God, principle. Head straight for your objective. Make the objective the divine spiritual life that God within you is, and God sees for all. No one ever accomplished anything unless, with all his will in complete focus, he held his objective, God, directly before the pure mirror of his thought force. That thought force is himself acting as God, demanding of himself that his attention be so thoroughly focused upon his objective, God, that it, God, is brought forth instantly. In the instant God is objectified, present the mold or pattern you desire, and it is filled full. If this were not an absolute fact, you would not, nor could you, have thought of your desire. When your desire is set forth in this way, it is divine. And with your divinity always projected, your desire is conceived in divine order. It is wholly within your power to say when it shall come forth, and you are always in command. You have all power to speak the word of authority. To all outer things, your command is complete silence. Now you can say definitely and knowingly, there is no greater power than the Christ within me. I now send forth my Christ-endowed word. It does accomplish all things instantly. There is no greater driving force than my Christ-endowed word. I praise, bless, and send it forth with abundance, harmony, and perfection. You have first spoken the word, God, which represents your true desire. Never go back again to the asking. This attitude endangers doubt. But go on. Recall what you have done. You have put forth your Christ word. You are in command. The thing is finished and complete. It is in divine order. I thank you, God, for life and light, abundant, full, and free, for perfect, boundless wealth and power and unhampered liberty. Recall that if any two unite their spiritual force, they can conquer the world, even though singly they can do nothing. These two are God and you, united in one purpose. If others will unite with you with the same sincerity of purpose, your power becomes greater as the square of the number of persons. Thus, every person standing forth with God and united with you becomes the power that is increasing fourfold. Here we talk about Lynn McTaggart's work, the intention experiment, or the power of 8 as it is known. And in there she scientifically documents this phenomenon known in biblical times as homothermadon. And it is when many are gathered with a single intention, that intention is amplified by the square root of the number of people there. And she recommends, where she has seen through her scientific observations and studies, that the ideal number of people to put together in order to achieve an intention is 8. When 8 people focus their consciousness on a single event, it tends to expedite the arrival of the manifestation of that event. It's a powerful way to pierce the veil, in other words, and tap into your vortex, as Abraham Hicks puts it, and then accept what abundance waits for you inside said vortex. Now, the cool thing about Lynn's work is that what she discovered is that person number 9 does receive a great blessing, a great energy, if you will, from these types of events. And the ones who, however, achieve or receive the most blessing are the people who are sending forth the intention. And that takes us back to a couple of chapters ago when the masters told the sojourners that he whomever wishes to call forth a bolt of lightning to strike down his brother ought know that the bolt shall first pass through his form. This is exactly the same way that intention works, and we can consciously channel a bolt of lightning, if you will, of positive intention towards somebody, and we can then lend direct spiritual aid to whatever mission, quest that they are on. When more are gathered, more powerful does become the experiment. If two of you shall unite with God as touching any one thing they shall ask, then it is done for them and of my Father. My God becomes your God, and we are together. Together with God, man conquers that which is not God-like. Now, in here, they make a direct distinction that the two that may be gathered in the name of Christ, in the name of sending forth a positive intention, can be your finite point of focus and your infinite point of focus. Because down here, we divide things up along a dualistic perception, sense of reality. We live in a dualistic paradigm, if you might say, or that's at least how we perceive our paradigm to transpire in a dualistic fashion, black and white, good and evil, man and female. So here they're saying that whilst it be that you perceive duality, marry those two into a singularity, and thy will be done. Because when one stands forth as the God principle, as the Christ incarnate, then nothing is impossible unto that point of consciousness, that point of focus, because you've brought forth the divine creative principle, the energy that's responsible for creating worlds. And remember how we do this: service unto others. Free will is the ultimate determinant of where you end up. Some may argue fate. Nonetheless, free will is going to get you to the place where you're studying material like this and where you're practicing it in your daily life, where you're presenting the ideal of the Christ, the ideal of Krishna, the ideal of Buddha, and bringing forth that consciousness. So free will is the ultimate determinant of where you end up. And I love, if you want to talk about fate, I love this line from The Matrix, where the Oracle tells Neo, you've already made the choice. You're here to try and understand it, which bespeaks to the higher self, which speaks to the magnitude of what and whom you really are. Because the thing that we may refer to as fate may simply be free will choices made in the higher self, that we are down here in our physical incarnations to understand. So when things happen to you that you may or may not agree with, try to perceive it through a lens like that this is a choice that you made for yourself. This is an experience that you aligned for yourself. And whilst you're down here in this physical body, in these physical shoes, as Abraham likes to put it, our job is to try and understand it, to try to absorb the wisdom and the lesson within that experience. And if you're like me, you'll have noticed by now when you're repeating cycles, and you'll have put two and two together, and you'll have determined that it's because you haven't taken the lesson away from those experiences yet. So one might say that your higher self continues to put those experiences in your vortex, and you continue to have those experiences until you become conscious to the point of graduating, of consciously recognizing the pattern and either stopping it if it's not beneficial to your ascension, or, as all things ultimately are beneficial to your ascension, you gain the wisdom from that experience and you begin to apply it in the next larger, if you will, evolving cycle that you're going to find yourself in, having learned the lessons from the one prior. It's a beautiful, beautiful conception of infinite life, of the dance between higher self and your individual point of consciousness focused here on the finite in this material world, in this material body. When you marry the two, you are more powerful because you are engendering, you are bringing forth the energy responsible for creating worlds. Through service to others is the path. God principle is the one point, and I am one with universal life energy. It is flowing through me now. I know it, I feel it, and I thank God my Father that I have the ability to accomplish all things. When you pray to God with I am in direct contact with all universal life energy, you are using it in limitless measure. God is the name that you give to the all-wise, intelligent spirit, and this spirit is within as well as without every human being. It is necessary for you to let God stand forth through you into outer expression. Therefore, it is not necessary to seek knowledge and help from outside sources when you know that the source of all knowledge, the spirit of all knowledge, and the understanding truth is latent within you. Why seek knowledge from without as the God, the universal spirit, is within? Through this understanding, you call upon this principle when you accomplish any one thing, and you know that the God within is the greatest of teachers. And thus ends my channel, right? Thus ends any career for any self-help individual when someone gets to themselves to this point, when they are able to tap that knowledge that's within them on a consistent and regular and reliable basis. They don't need books anymore necessarily. They don't need external teachers anymore because they're beginning to open the faucet of infinite intelligence within themselves. Every single one of us has the ability to open that tap and let that energy and that knowledge and that wisdom flow forth. Now, until you're there, until you're ready to put it into practice, and until it actually becomes your reality, then by all means, listen to a channel like this, read books like this. All of these things are I like to think of it as like wax on, wax off. You are building and building and building your confidence in yourself because ultimately it's you that wrote this. It's ultimately you and your infinite consciousness that wrote this book and left this message so that you could then read it again, so that then you could remind yourself of your infinite capabilities and your infinite wisdom, so that then you would live it out. Stop living on this side of the veil in Maya, in the illusion, and return to reality. Wake up from the dream, so to speak, and start living fully conscious and fully present. You realize that all the power you possess is first drawn to you, then gathered within your body and sent forth to accomplish whatever you direct it to bring forth. This is God emanating through you, not a personal God, but an all-inclusive God within you. When you let God stand forth from within, you are connected with God, as God interpenetrates all conditions. And by worshiping God within and seeing God standing forth from you, you are worshiping God, the deity in the whole human family. To worship an outside deity is to bring forth idolatry. To worship God within and see God standing forth from the within out to all the world is to bring forth and be in conscious contact with the emanations of God, life, and light everywhere. There cannot be a deity outside of your body that is not within your body, as all is vibrating or emanating energy. Thus, these vibrations flow through your body as well as around it, and the vibrations of deity include every atom of your whole body as well as the whole mass of the universe. Thus, you put God everywhere, before all, within all, around all, enveloping all, and enfolding all. There is not an atom of space that does not have the emanating energy of light and life flowing through it. Having finished this discourse, Emil stated that they would meet us in Hadawar and bade us good night. Thus ends the reading of chapter 13 from book 3 of Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East. When we marry our consciousness, or when we liberate ourselves from the perception of duality, then all potentiality is ours. All potentiality becomes us. And then, acting in accordance with divine will, we bring forth ultimate goodness. And we move and we have our being within source. as part and parcel of Source. And in so doing, we are everlasting, we are eternal, we are all loving, all wise, and all knowing. I personally look forward to the day when that is the only thing that I do. Until then, I bring you this message.